Yeah, really great to have you here. Welcome, Keith and Andrew and Michael. Going to be talking to us about teaching in virtual worlds. Do we have one other person? Oh, yes, Christine. Yes, let's see. I don't see her camera on, but I see her here. I'm going to put her on there so she can at least. Oh, there she is. Wonderful. Okay, welcome
All
to
right.
you. I'm going to turn things over to Keith and to moderate this panel, and I will be watching with interest from the background. Take it away, Keith.
All right. Thank you for having me and for having this great panel in a day of amazing panels. I've gotten no work done all day, is glued to YouTube. So so the topic for this panel is teaching in virtual campuses and classrooms. We've learned about a lot of issues involving things like funding and accessibility and technology. And now we're going to talk about what exactly can you do in WebXR and in virtual worlds and teach in that new setting, which is going to become more and more important, even pandemic or not, that it's something that is building up. So I'd like to go through the panelists and just have them briefly introduce themselves and talk about how they got into VR and education. So start with, looks like Chris is at the top.
Okay, great. So I used to be a former business school professor here in New York City. And prior to the pandemic, I started experimenting with VR in my entrepreneurship classes. And so just one of the first ones on campus to actually, get the devices, partner up with a local VR development company, and play out a few scenarios. So that's how I initially got started. And then I resigned from higher ed a year ago to start my own venture, my own ed tech venture.
All right, I'm sure we'll hear more about that coming up. All right, Andrew, how about you?
Hey, so I'm Andrew Wright. I'm a teacher, education consultant, and here in Australia, where it's raining still for the last month. But so I still teach in classrooms, and I'm a consultant as iTeacher. And I built the EDUmetaverse, which is a series of 34 virtual worlds where students can come in and learn. And we sort of work on the concept of the hybrid classroom, where we take the best bits of online learning and mesh them together with the physical classroom. So it's very, very interesting because it's right at the very beginning of it all. So it's all new and innovative. And we're finding some amazing results with the teachers I work with. So happy to show you some of it.
Very cool. And Michael.
Hi, everyone. Michael Avis. I am a professor and educational developer at a college here in Toronto. I've been teaching I'm on my 23rd year. I can't believe it. I've been teaching for a long time, and I started to get into VR. I mean, it's always about engaging your students, and adult learners are a little bit different than young learners, and engagement for adult learners is really important. And I started to think about how I could really engage them and get them sort of more on tangible and active learning, and VR was the natural progression. So I'm in the game, and we're seeing where we're going with it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure we can all relate with that. Michael, since you're talking just now, I'll ask you the first question. So what is the benefit of teaching in VR? Like, why there's so many things, hurdles? So what's the overall benefit to all this?
Well, I'm sure all of us here who have started, and Chris, you said that you started with the headsets, you went through all the frustrations, all the learning, and it never ends. But I work in polytechniques in Toronto, so a lot of trades work, a lot of hands-on work. So VR for me was the progression from, going on Zoom, but then being able to actually have them in a space. So I've taught in Engage, in AltSpace, and a few other different spaces, and I've sort of experimented with a whole bunch of them. One of the things that I really found valuable was going into Engage. I'm not sure if the audience is familiar. I'm sure most people are. But one of the things that we do is we have a hospitality course, and I'm supporting, at this point, I'm supporting faculty to do this, but they have a hospitality course, and we scanned a location in Toronto, the Hilton Hotel. We scanned it, LiDAR, we made a 3D model, we put it into Engage, and then we have students actually in the Hilton Hotel location and moving tables around and setting up event spaces in virtual space, which is impossible, expensive. We know how all those things that VR does for us. But one of the great things that I was in maybe a month ago is you'd have students and you'd have a bar set up where you had to set up a bar that was close to the exit and the entrance of a room. And in Engage, you can stand there and say, okay, how far from the wall should this be? And the students are actually standing and looking at the dimensions in 3D, right, in virtual space. That is invaluable learning that they would never be able to do in real time. So just things like that, I really see the value of those students being able to have that spatial awareness, be able to place things in space, be able to collaborate and move around. Wonderful, wonderful learning.
Yeah, that's amazing. And use that I've never thought of. And we've had some great panels about things like the medical training and so on to add on hospitality and arranging in a real space or virtually real looking space. All right, Andrew, what's a main benefit of teaching in VR?
I mean, primarily for us, what we're finding is engagement. I mean, it's just off the hook. We don't actually use the headsets because it's WebXR. We're sort of based on browser, so the worlds we built sort of are supposed to be like used on the browser because that gives accessibility to so many students. And I think what we're finding, and I think what the most amazing thing is, and a lot of the teachers say the same stuff, is that when you have that ability to, like yesterday, we brought in 2 schools from separated by 1,000 kilometers to come into a virtual world to run a market store as in pairs, and these students had never met each other before, but they had to come together to do that. And I think it's not just the engagement, but just the accessibility is, and what we're able to achieve. And one of the teachers said something really interesting the other day. It was like, just limited by our imagination and the students. And if you can have that in education, I think it's just unbelievable. It's an absolute no-brainer that this is the way it needs to go. And some of the stuff and it's not, and the thing that I found the most interesting, I think, was that this opens up a world for students, not necessarily the brightest or the loudest, but what we're finding is it's the ones that you would normally be in the back quiet, and it's bringing them to the forefront. And that power that it's given them or enabling them is priceless. So we're seeing it, just an incredible, again, if I had to put it down to a nutshell, be engagement. That's probably the most obvious thing. And through engagement becomes retention. And so that understand, if you're invested in what you're learning, you're going to remember it. No child has ever said to me, hey, that worksheet we did last month, can we do that again? Ever. So we're finding that it's just an incredible, platform to be able to reach students that might not necessarily get reached with a worksheet.
Definitely, and engagement's important. And hear about social aspects as well, learning together and meeting other people, other peers. That's also very important. And Chris, anything to add about benefits, impact of VR teaching?
Absolutely. So, coming from higher ed, I was never a fan of passive lectures and textbooks and let's do an exam on a Scantron. I mean, this is not a great learning experience, nor is an accurate representation of the learner's capability. I hated all that stuff. I've always been a fan of experiential learning. It's like learning by doing. That's when it's really going to stick. So I'm going to second your comment about engagement. So that's the biggest thing. When you are learning by doing, I mean, if you go look at teaching and learning modules, that's you retain 90% of what you do versus 5% of what you read or 10% of what you listen to. So massive opportunity there to really have an impact on the learning experience, aside from the fact that it's fun. It's cool. You got that cool factor. You can't, what I use, I'm definitely in the headset. So it's impossible to multitask when you are in the headset. So there's no hiding,
Yeah.
No hiding in the background or hiding on Zoom or whatever. And I think I read something the other day that said that VR, or let's say XR, is going to replace Zoom and Google Meet and going forward. I'm like, I agree 100% because it's that much more. Let's go back to the engaging and that social part and that feeling of being present somewhere and being with everybody no matter where they are. That's a game changer for me. And the other thing that I find really cool is there's so many ways to capture metrics, whether it's in the headset or things that I've created on my campus, and different simulations through hotspots and stuff that you just can't capture on Zoom or even sitting in a classroom. So that's like really fun stuff because you can really follow the progress of the learner and be able to analyze and report that in a really interesting way because everybody is wondering about, that return on investment. Should we even use VR? Like, is this just a fun thing? Is this just a fad? So I get really excited about the data part too.
Cool. And points that I never thought of, like focus, like headset, you can't look at your phone as easily, and also the assessment.
Right.
Yeah,
they're
that's
literally and figuratively. Right?
Yeah, they have to do that activity, which is a great activity, so it's no problem. So the next question I want to ask is, because you're all world builders, this panel is about making virtual classrooms. So what is the favorite thing that you've been involved in making? And I'll go with Andrew first.
I knew you were going to do that. I was at the bottom. Why are you picking me? I think just the favorite thing. I mean, the thing that I love most, and the way that I sort of operated, it's a bit of a crazy story. So we were doing Zoom learning, and this goes back to what was mentioned earlier on about how Zoom wasn't really working for students. I mean, we had kids that would video or GIFs of themselves just doing this, and then they would leave it up there and then clear off and start doing Minecraft and stuff. So that's when I realized we needed to make some else. But for me, I think the most amazing thing about it is that, I taught myself how to use Blender, which is interesting, but enough just to start building these worlds. And then the great thing was I had these lessons because like Michael, I've been teaching for donkey's years, over 20. I don't want to say how many, but a long time. But what I had was these lessons that worked really, really well. There were a few in those 20 years. And I just thought, oh, well, wouldn't it be great if we could apply those lessons that work to a virtual world? And so the virtual worlds were built around a lesson that had already happened. And the most amazing thing for me was to see how we did that in the physical classroom, and then how we could sort of transport that lesson into the virtual world. Like, for example, we did stuff on the Titanic, and then I managed to be able to build a little Titanic world that the students could run a court case in, so they were either prosecuting or defending the White Star Line. But before that, we did that in the classroom. But now we could actually do it on the deck of the Titanic, and just like people just lost their minds. Like, I lost my mind, and I was like, this is amazing. And the kids were running across each side of the deck, and I said, oh, you can. Then we blocked it off so they couldn't actually go over. And I just think that the most amazing thing for me, to answer your original question, is to see how we can take learning to the next level, what worked before, and then upgrade it to a point where it's just incredible. I cannot put a price on the level that we talk about engagement. And I work with primary school, primarily with the younger students, which I think is quite unusual, especially to be doing something as sort of technical as this. But it's just second nature for them, and they absolutely love it. With the bell or ring, and we can't get rid of them. They don't want to go out at lunchtime. They want to keep working. So,
classroom management becomes a whole other issue when you're on the deck of the Titanic, right?
Yeah, and one of the interesting things was, sorry to take too much time, one of the interesting things was the behavioral management side of stuff was almost non-existent because everybody was so focused and so engaged in what they were doing. And we treat the virtual worlds like the real world. And we say to them at the beginning, look, this virtual classroom is an extension of the physical classroom. how you act in the real world is how you act online. And that has ramifications later on when we look at digital citizenship, and already then they're thinking to themselves, okay, so my actions here will have ramifications in the online world. And again, that's priceless too. So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I knew you have 30 plus worlds to choose from, but the Titanic one sounds really cool. And there's a way to end that lesson automatically for all the students, I think, but we have to program that in there. Michael, how about you? What's something you're especially proud of in your work?
I just want to appreciate Andrew's energy, if I may, at this point. Like, Andrew, I can feel that sort of that teacher spirit in you when you're talking about your students being engaged. It's it's great to see.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I have a lot. There's a lot going on. In a previous session, they were talking about underserved populations. I thought it was a really good session. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is equity. And I also want to shout out the Karen and Ben here. They've had a really diverse group of people presenting at this summit, and I really recognize, how much great work is going on out there across all different cultural areas, different countries. So I'm really passionate about that, and we've really done a lot of work in some of the worlds that we've built to put in museums. So we built a Black Canadian History Museum gallery where people could walk in, and you're intermixing, 3D objects with historical documents and historical items, with images, painting, and really creating a really engaging, diverse, interesting visual experience to kind of help educate people about diversity in the classroom. And another thing that we've created that I'm really proud of is with a company out of England called Body Swaps, we created a virtual reality anti-racism simulation called Let's Talk About Race. And it has 3 modules. One of them is about recognizing your own privilege. Another one is navigating microaggressions and about understanding bias. And we've rolled it out to 2,000 sessions so far, and the results have been astounding in seeing that it's a way that can change behavior and change the way that people see themselves. So we're really proud of that, and a lot of colleges and universities across Canada are starting to look at that as a viable way to help people understand who they are and understand their environment and understand that. And Toronto's a very diverse city, so really understanding how to be digital citizens, how to be culturally aware citizens, and that kind of mixed in with what we're doing in the virtual worlds with museums. It's a whole new way to teach people about culture. It's a whole new way to teach people about understanding other people's perspective and really understanding your own. So those 2 things have been the highlights of my last probably year or 2 in developing and working with VR.
Right, that's incredible. And yeah, I knew about the Let's Talk About Race project, and that's super important. And I teach biological anthropology, and race and the cultural component of it is a very important part. And getting across the ideas, the scientific ideas now about that is really difficult. And VR be something that really helps with empathy, especially that VR is so good at that.
And Chris mentioned this when she said, once they have their headsets on, they're trapped. If any of you have ever done EDI training, it's clicking boxes and saying, I've done it. But when you're sitting in a room with 2 people having an argument about race and you're present there, it's a whole other experience. So when people say things, you feel angry and you feel upset about what you're hearing, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, so glad you brought that up. That compared to like the trainings we would do about different compliance things, it's so non-immersive. And to really get across like a project like Let's Talk About Race does it so much better. All right, Chris, anything you want to talk about in your world that you're proud of?
Of course. So I'm very proud that I cut the cord from academe, and I'm like, there's got to be something better out there, and I'm not going to sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. So I partnered with a company here in New York City called the Glimpse Group. They are a VR development firm, and in partnership with them, I designed an entire campus in VR. So I have multiple venues. It's not just one room. So I've got, and I should say this, the name of the company is Edstutia, that I launched in. We're positioned at the intersection of business and technology. So that's where I'm honing in. So I'm not doing things with healthcare or construction, and I'm honing in on higher ed and adult learners. So I'm a little bit different than where Andrew's focusing. So lots of really cool venues and great cutting edge technology baked into that. But our value really comes in. My team is we're the content creators. That's the real sweet spot. And how do you create content and curriculum, leveraging immersive technologies to create some really purposeful, engaging learning experiences, and also being able to track and monitor the outcomes. So I'm proud of that. And one of the cool things that we have on our campus, we've got a building called the Exploratory with multiple 360 theaters in there. And what we did is we created a layer on top of that. So when you go into the 360 theater, we're able to test the learner's knowledge on the spot with all sorts of questions and information, and tracking if they got it right or wrong, and educating them right there, then and there, when they're immersed in that experience. But again, I'm going to go back to the metrics part, the data. We're able to capture all that data as well. So to really show, how much did the learners get right or wrong, and being able to go back and reflect on that, and that gets fed up into their dashboard too. So that's the cool step. It's that real-time immersive experience that makes a big difference. And the other thing that I'm going to say that I'm really proud of is, because of our experience meeting with potential clients, I've heard this is gonna resonate with you. So many people are like, yeah, this is really cool. This is really exciting, but I'm not quite sure how to do this. Like, we're ahead of the curve here. And so getting people, mass adoption, this is going to take a while. So it's just educating people on the value of using VR beyond just the cool factor. And so we've had to take a little bit of a sidestep to make sure that people feel comfortable, just learning how to navigate, dealing things with dizziness, things like that. So we've done a lot around creating content and resources to help people get comfortable. And through that, what we ended up creating was an instructor certification program in XR. So for professors, coaches, corporate L&D folks who want to start embracing and integrating XR into their existing training programs, whether it be onboarding, D&I, upskilling, etc. There's a whole program that we take them through so they understand what is the metaverse, why should you care, what does it mean for you as a learning specialist, 2D, 3D, VR, AR, XR, and they're actually learning stuff along the way and learning about metrics. And at the end, they actually deliver their first course in virtual reality. So we send them on their way, having done it, right? Not just read about it or watch somebody else do it. So actually doing the work in VR. So that's a really cool thing that I'm very proud of, and hopefully can push more people forward and getting comfortable using the technology.
Yeah, the virtual campus is just amazing to see. I like how it does blend like a traditional looking campus with VR things like the theater setup, and really leveraging the positives of both. And actually, the virtual campus is so great. A long time ago as a student, I was like thinking, and I was addicted to World of Warcraft. Like, I wish Stormwind was a school, right? I wish a school was this, and looks like you're making it happen. So, super impressed with your work. So with the remaining time, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's fun being an early adopter. It's fun doing all these things that we're doing, because it's energizing, and it's new, and it's fresh, and it's important. So I can hear it from all you.
Yeah, I think that's what you said. Like, it is. It's what we're finding as well with teachers is, as soon as you show this to teachers, the energy that comes to them from what you're trying to do, and that message of saying, look, this is where we're going with Education 3.0. And as soon as they see it and realize that it isn't some dark magic, that it is something that they can access just with a web click, it's just unbelievable. And then all of a sudden they become energized, and the teachers that I work with, and I work with some amazing teachers who've just sort of on a wing and a prayer just said, oh yeah, I'll get involved. But for them, it changes their role. They've moved from teacher to facilitator, and I think that's an incredibly powerful thing. And we're seeing in a time when we're hemorrhaging teachers, here in Australia and around the world, people just don't want to do it. But yet suddenly it's not the global panacea, but it's basically a new way of teaching, and it is engaging, and it is innovative, and it is sort of inspiring for some teachers. It's amazing. I love it.
Could I add a little bit to that, Andrew, just quickly? It's just that point about the teachers. I think this is what Chris was talking about when she's helping to train these new methodologies, these new people. I had in the hospitality course, the event planning course, the professor came along with me, as you said. He said, I don't know anything about technology. I'm terrible at it. 2 years later, he's now on the tech group within the college. Yeah. He's now the leader within the hospitality and an event planning faculty, just because he grew and built together with us. Yeah. And that's it's so exciting, because you can really fail and work together. It's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, it is. It's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and getting teachers who are maybe on the edge of getting involved in VR, getting the headset on them, and then having them get the headset on the administrators to really make it happen. It was very important. These virtual classrooms just amazing to see. Andrew's background is one of the things he's made, and it's just an automatically engaging space, and I feel like I'm learning just seeing his background.
I wish it was that simple, but yeah, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Like, we go back to the engagement side of stuff, but imagine if you were learning about the oceans, and this is one of the things we're finding. You're a junior school student, you're learning about the oceans, you're learning about climate change, but you can actually be there. You can actually hear the whales. We use a lot of spatial sound, and you can hear the whales, and you can move towards them, and you can hear the sounds that they're making. You can engage. It's just another level, and it will pull together the entire class. I've been doing this now for 6 months, created 35 different worlds, all geared around the curriculum. So when I've never met a class that didn't come in and just lose their minds. So we have to give them 10 minutes of mind losing time. And then we have to say to them, right, you got 10 minutes to go find the whales. You got 10 minutes to go do this, or whatever world it might be, go into this biome, that biome, explore. After 10 minutes, that's when we start teaching. So that's the power of it. It is quite incredible. Yeah. And as a teacher talking to other teachers who might be listening, for goodness sake, just give it a go. Just jump on board. It's not hard. A lot of stuff's already been made for you. And especially like some of the applications that are out there, give them a go, because I tell you what, your students will thank you for it. And get in touch. I'm happy to talk you through it and help you out.
Yeah, definitely. I heard from a previous talk that the headsets are of course wonderful, but with WebXR, computers, iPads, smartphones, these more common devices also have some of that wow factor as well. So
that's exactly right. I mean, and for me, it's about getting this out to as many people as possible, being able to reach as many students as possible, to be able to change the life. And it's going to sound really crazy, but just look what I'm doing. It's nothing about that. It is for me about making a difference. It's about changing education and pushing it forward, and giving every student that could get access to this. Not everybody's going to afford a headset. Great if you've got one, but the beauty of WebXR is that it is just a web click and just a browser. So on any device, away we go. And I love that about this and that technology. So and it's changing lives. It is 100% changing lives.
Mm-hmm. Just to wrap up, though, we're running out of time. Real quick. Any other experiences with VR classrooms or campuses that you want to share, just to really impress our audience about how cool this stuff is? It's hard to convey those words, but yeah, that's the last thing.
I'll say one thing, and then I'll let the others talk. One of the students said to me, sorry, and I'm conscious of taking up everybody's time. One of the students said to me, and this will always stick with me, she said, during the pandemic, when we started doing this, we can't actually go anywhere. In here, we can go everywhere. And that for me, I said, I'm going to steal that and put on a t-shirt. So thank you very much. But that for me is the wow moment when I was like, yeah, that's true. So that was quite incredible.
Wow, that is amazing. Really fantastic. This has been an awesome conversation. I love hearing from you all. Just these sessions are all outstanding, and what a community we have here, and that has come up over and over again in our conversations. I want to thank you, Michael, Andrew, Chris, and Keith, who's hopped off, and really appreciate having you here. Keith, thank you so much. Appreciate this, and appreciate you all taking your time to come and talk to other educators and help them to figure out how they can make use of these tools and inspire people the way that you are doing. So we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.